On this episode of Extraordinary Lives, I'm talking to Mark Forstater. Mark is best known as a film producer, most notably Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which achieved huge global popularity, as well as plenty of controversy. He's an author of 7 non-fiction books about philosophy and spirituality, including The Seventh Python. I'm interested to know Mark's thoughts on even trying to go about making a comedy film nowadays without offending someone. It must be near impossible. Mark has recently set up Dreambird Studios, and I want to know what makes Dreambird different to the traditional business model of how films are made and funded. I'm really looking forward to talking with Mark. Mark, welcome.
Well, good to be here.
Tell me, who is Mark Forstater?
Who is Mark Forstater? Well, Mark Forstater is known as a film producer. He's also an author. He's also a record producer and an audio producer and a television producer. He's been doing a lot of things for a long time. And now he's a tech entrepreneur.
Cool. I can't wait to find out about that. I want to go back to when you were growing up. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
I had no idea what I wanted to be. But my mother, being a good Jewish mama, said, well, you'll never be a doctor. You're not smart enough to be a lawyer. What do you think about being an accountant? And I said, no way. I'm not interested in that at all. I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Interesting. So there's so many things you've now done. What was the journey and the inspiration to ultimately getting into film producing?
Yeah, well, from an early age, I was going to the local, cinema, the movie house, and watching whatever was on, whether it was an Audie Murphy war film or, an action movie or Disney, And when I was about 16, I have an older brother, and he and his friends started going to a new cinema, which had opened up near us. And it was an art house cinema. They were showing films by Truffaut and Bergman, Fellini, all the great European directors. And suddenly I was watching all these movies which were totally unlike the ones that were in my local cinema. And I thought, I like these films.
Yeah.
How do they do it? How do they get these made? I just had a curiosity about it. I thought, well, I'd like to try and make these one day. I don't know how, but that was what started it.
I love that. And from that inspiration to coming over to the UK, and ultimately then, tell me the journey of how that progressed.
Well, I wanted to make movies, but I didn't know how to. And eventually I couldn't face going to the West Coast because I had no money. And I thought, if I go there, I need a car. I don't know anyone. It was like too far. So I went to New York City, to the City College of New York Film School, which was an evening course. And I took a job at an insurance company to pay my bills while I watched movies. I must have seen 10 films a week in New York. They had great, the Thalia Theater, the Museum of Modern Art. And I just caught up on all the old movies. It was an amazing education. And I met Terry Gilliam at the City College of New York Film School. We were fellow students. Eventually, we got an apartment together. This was in 1963. And the Vietnam War was going on, getting worse, and I couldn't stand being in the country while that was happening. I felt it was
disassociation.
I was a crime. I just couldn't face. Didn't want to be drafted for it. I couldn't even live in the country while it was happening. The kind of patriotism that was just too much for me. So I had a chance to go to Manchester to study for a year, study English, and I took that and went and did a year off. And I also got married at the same time. I was 20 years old. I got married. My bride was even younger. There was only one place in the country we could get married, which was North Carolina. So we had to fly down to North Carolina. And, And I had a little beard at the time, and my first wife is half Japanese. So when we walked down the streets of Raleigh, North Carolina, capital of the state, the traffic stopped. Stopped.
It was an event.
Yeah, it was like this. Every person in the car, these people, it was like we were aliens. I mean, so anyway, we got married. We took the flight back to New York, and that was it.
Love that. Love that story. And you mentioned Terry Gilliam and what ultimately became your journey to becoming...
Yeah, I was studying at Manchester. I then came back to Philadelphia. I went to Temple University. I got a degree, a BA, and I went back to Manchester to do a postgraduate course.
Sure.
I did the course, but I never wrote the thesis because I actually didn't want to be an academic, and I couldn't see a purpose in it. So I tried to get into television up there in Granada,
Okay.
and I couldn't get in, and eventually went to London to go to the London Film School. And during that time, I noticed Terry Gilliam's credit on a television show on London Weekend TV, and I thought, it has to be the same Terry Gilliam, I think. So I contacted the station, and they put me in touch with him, and sure enough, he had moved to England 6 months earlier, and so we remade our friendship.
Brilliant.
Which was amazing.
And that ultimately led to you producing Monty Python, The Holy Grail.
Yeah, well, Terry was about, at that time, Monty Python didn't exist. They were just about to begin. And so through him, I met Michael Palin and Terry Jones, Graham Chapman. And I obviously followed their progress.
Sure.
They had a tremendous series, which I loved. Yeah. And then they made a terrible film. They did a kind of a rehash of all their TV sketches, and they didn't like it either. It didn't do any business, and no one liked it. And Terry asked me if I would produce their next film. And of course I said yes. And they had a script which was half medieval, King Arthur, and half present day, Arthur King. And the only contribution I made artistically to it, because they didn't want me to give any, they didn't want an artistic producer. They wanted someone who just raised the money and get it together. I said, I prefer the medieval stuff, it's funnier, and I'm not so keen on Arthur King. So they kind of agreed, and then they rewrote it, so it became the...
So you massively influenced the outcome of Monty Python, The Holy Grail.
Yeah. I mean, look, it was very obvious to me. I wasn't an experienced producer, right? This is my first film, but I recognized that this was a funnier idea than the other, and I thought, well, why not just expand it? And they poo-pooed it, so, oh, no, we won't do that. And then they wrote it. Yeah. Because, and they got it right.
And what a global success that film was and is.
Yeah.
But of course associated with a lot of controversy. And I'll tell you what's interesting to me is just in your capacity now, or someone in your capacity making films, producing films, especially if they're trying to make a comedy, how do you go about that in today's world? Are you going to offend everybody potentially one way or another? It must be a minefield. But knowing in the previous chat that we've had that there are ideas and potentially how to get those ideas to come to fruition, I'd love to know about your new venture.
Yeah. Well, my partner, Nathan Newman, and I, we made a film after COVID called Swipe Fever. It's a rom-com for Gen Z. It's for 20-year-olds. Nathan's 30. I'm, well. So we realized how hard it was, to make a film, produce one, raise the money, and then even after you've done that, to distribute it is even harder. And so many producers just can't get their films really properly distributed. You know, they might end up with them on some streamer somewhere. But that's like putting a book in a library. You know, I mean, how do people know about it? There's no marketing, and no one, you know. So we realized it was really almost impossible to make an independent production anymore. Really hard. Yeah. So we thought, well, how would we like it to be? What if we were starting it from scratch? What would the system be that we think could work? Sure. And so we've come up with a new structure, a new ecosystem for the film industry that will work for the 21st century. But I know.
Tell me more. Tell us all more.
Okay. Well, what we worked out was that every film in history has been funded by the audience. Yeah. They bought tickets. They watched ads. They pay subscriptions. Sure. But they've never had a say in what got made. Yeah. They had to take what was offered to them by a small group of studios.
And yet they are the paying punters, right?
It's there, yeah, exactly. And they paid for all the films have been paid by that. So we decided that there were two main parties in this whole business. There's buyers and sellers. Mm-hmm. The buyers are the viewers, the audience. And the sellers are the producers, the directors, the writers, the creators. So we're creating a platform that puts them together. Right. And they can socialize, they can talk, they can communicate, they can collaborate, they can fund, and there'll be a streaming service where they can show what they make, and there'll be tools for them to make productions, and anyone who is interested in becoming a producer or learning can come on this platform and do it, and it will be really you know, a new film industry.
Amazing. So this is Dreambird Digital.
This is
Dreambird Studios.
Yeah. Well, Dreambird, we call it Dreambird, but it's in two parts. Dreambird Digital is the infrastructure. That's this what I've just described.
Yeah.
And Dreambird Studios is our own production company, because we'll make films for the platform as well.
Yeah.
As well as other people. So we're giving people the tools to make films, and we're making them as well. And anyone can do it. I mean, there was a couple called the Tofflers, Alvin and Heidi Toffler. 1980, they wrote a book called The Third Wave. Okay. And in The Third Wave, they predicted that around this time, 2020 or so, that the technology would be such that the viewers would turn into what they called prosumers. That is, they would be interested more in being engaged, and even in producing. They would be interested in having their own, right? Which is what's happening. That's Instagram and that's YouTube, right?
It's the future.
They predicted it. So that's what we're doing. We're giving fans, prosumers, and viewers a way to have a say in what they're going to see, and to pre-buy a viewing. Yeah. So they can pre-buy a stream.
And this is not available right now. No one else
we haven't built it.
No, but is anyone else doing it?
No one's doing it, no. We're the only people
exciting.
As far as we know. I mean, there are people who are doing bits of it. Yeah. But it's no good doing.
You're connecting up all the parts.
Exactly. And they all work together.
Love that.
You can't just do it. You can't just say, oh, we'll make production with NFT money. Well, what about distribution? You're still stuck.
Yes.
You know, you can make a film, and then what do you do with it?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Brilliant. That sounds awesome. So you've made over 30 films. We've clearly all heard of Monty Python, Holy Grail. Not a lot of the other ones in context. I'm interested in how you value success and what you learn from failures. And are there films you've made that you've been super proud of and thought would do well and haven't, and kind of why? And are there films you've made that, for whatever reason, have done particularly well with a certain audience, but you've been surprised haven't been more mainstream? I'm just interested in that sort of concept.
Well, I've been lucky in that I've made two classics. One is Monty Python, the Holy Grail, which over time I think may well become the #1 comedy film of all time, because it's historical, it's unique. Period, and unique, and the comedy still works. So it's been rising in that chart. Who knows? I don't know who makes that chart, but anyway, it's been rising in the chart for 50 years. I also made a little sci-fi horror film called Extro in 1982 with a director called Harry Bromley Davenport. And that's a cult classic. People who know that film really like it. It's an amazing kind of surreal movie. I'm very proud of that film. It did very well, and it's still alive. So I've got two classics. That's not bad. I've made a few films that didn't work, and I learned from them. That's what you do. And I made some that were very interesting and important, but didn't actually get a very big audience. But they did all right. I mean, I made a couple of films for HBO that were good, very well-made films. They liked those, but they weren't breakout films. But you know, it takes a long time to learn how to make a film.
Sure.
I mean, to make a good film. You can make a film. Anyone can make a film.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be very good unless you're a genius. So you learn from your failures.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that Dreambird is going to do. Dreambird is going to increase the chances of great films, because there'll be many, many more made, and it'll lower the cost of failure. And lowering the cost of failure is really important. Yeah. Because Hollywood is totally risk averse. They have to spend so much on every movie. They're ultra, ultra cautious. Yeah. They can't take a chance. So you can't. There's no creative spark in that.
No, I get that.
It's a bit dead.
Yeah.
So Dreambird will allow all kinds of films to be made. There'll be terrible films made on there, but there'll be great ones too. Yeah. And the people who make the terrible ones will say, "I see what you mean. I'll make it better next time." You know.
Yeah. But again, you're learning from.
And look, I've been doing this for a very long time.
Yeah.
You know, you can watch a film, and you know it's good, and you say, "Wow, that's great. I think I could do that." Yeah. But actually, you can't. No. I mean, you could, but it will take you
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
With that perspective
Yeah.
and the experience and the knowledge that you've got, is there a film that if you could just wave the magic wand and the funding was there and so on, that you would make?
I can't say that there's one. Nathan and I at Dreambird Studios have a slate of 17 films.
Okay.
We'd like to make,
Over time, you've just been...
we've been gathering the projects and developing them, and people bring us projects which we like.
Yeah.
So we've just created a whole slate which we can make over 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
We want to make all those films.
Cool. Are they a specific genre? Are they more comedy related, or?
Nathan wants to make a new film called Night Terror.
Okay.
Which is a kind of a horror film.
Yeah.
Because he suffers from night terrors. You know, night terrors, about half the population, or at least a third of the population, have these night terrors. They have nightmares in the middle of this night.
Sure.
And
wake up sweating
and they see kind of figures. Like there's this old woman, this hag figure. There's this man, the tall, strange man. And they are recurrent figures to many, many people. So he suffered that all his life. He wanted to make a film about that.
Sounds terrifying.
Yeah, it's
you need to make it,
right? Yeah. So he wants to do that, and I wanted to make it.
Yeah.
So I'd say of the 17, I'd like to see that one made for him.
It looks like you keep fit. You've got a sparkle in your eye. What do you do to keep mentally fit and physically? Because I know that yoga is important to you.
Yeah.
I'd love to know how you got into that and kind of why. Okay. What else do you do?
Okay, I started doing yoga in 1980. My second wife had done yoga since she was a teenager, and she got me into it. And from that, I then went on and did Tai Chi, because I'm very interested in Taoism and Eastern philosophies.
Sure.
And then recently I've added Pilates to it. So I do yoga and Pilates about 4 times a week, and I swim. And yes, I'm fit because 2 years ago I did a blood test and my doctor said you're pre-diabetic, which scared me a lot, right? So I said, I've got to change my diet. And I cut out cake, ice cream, most fruit drinks. In other words, a lot of sugar. I reduced the pasta. And I eat no bread, more or less. I eat all of these things rarely, because I enjoy them. But they're a
treat now, not every day.
Exactly a treat. Yeah. So I've tried to reduce all the things that I know. So I lost 20 pounds over a period of, 6 months. And I've kept it off.
Cool.
So that's a lot of it.
I like that.
Mentally, I've learned from Taoism. I got to Taoism through Confucius and Mencius. So it was like Confucianism led me to Taoism, and from Taoism I learned about Zen Buddhism, and I wrote a book about yoga, which I had to learn about yoga philosophy, which is Vedanta, yoga philosophy and Hindu philosophy. So I've spent a hell of a long time learning about those Eastern philosophies and figuring out what in them is valuable. And what's valuable is very simple. Meditation is really very valuable and crucial. I meditate every week. I meditate only 1 day a week. I don't have time to do more. There are people who do. I think it's great if they can. But once you get into the practice and habit of meditating, it's very easy to have a meditative mind.
Sure.
You don't need to be sitting formally doing meditation to be in a meditation. And Tai Chi is a moving meditation. So that's,
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I know you've written books on philosophy and on the yoga, which is, again, part of your multifaceted journey. I'm also interested, these are ways of de-stressing. You've had a fair share of stress coming your way. One of the books is The Seventh Python, and what happened there with the journey of what must have been such an enjoyable, fun time with the other Monty Python guys to then have to go to court and fight them. Tell me more about that.
Well, you know, making a film isn't a fun time, even if the film turns out to be fun. It's always hard.
Well, I
It's
imagined
hard.
it would. I mean, it just, you know, when you watch the film, you just imagine behind
Yeah.
the camera, but it wasn't that for you.
No, it's too. There's too many things going on that
Sure,
are tough.
the pressure.
And, yeah, so it's not fun. But when you look at the results, you can laugh at the
Sure.
results. That's great. That's what matters. In fact, there's many films where if the crew and the cast are really having a great time, it's sometimes you know the film's not going to work because they're somehow, you know, that's not getting communicated on screen. But anyway, that's that's just a professional kind of thing.
But it's experience.
Yeah. So yeah, I made Monty Python the Holy Grail. It became an instant success, and it's made the Pythons each £2 million. Terry Gilliam and Terry Jones became directors because of that film. That was their first film. Michael Palin and Graham Chapman became leading actors. And Eric Idle was able to make Spamalot, the musical based on the Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which made him millions of dollars. He's, you know. But 30 years after making the film, their manager questioned my invoices. 30 years of invoices, which they paid. He questioned my invoices, and I was really stressed. It was you know, I mean, he's saying, you know, you've been cheating us for 30 years. You know, that's not what's been happening. That's the deal. This was the contract. He said, no, we've reread the contract. We think you're not following it. So suddenly, I'm faced with losing half of my royalties, which, you know, at some time I was living on. And I tried to, it took me 8 years to try and convince them not to pursue this. And we did a mediation, but they wouldn't, they didn't let go. I had to take them to court.
That's stressful.
Even though I had no desire to go to court. So it took 8 years. I was trying to not go to court. And then, of course, the court case was, you know, obviously very stressful. So during all this time, that's what I've written about it in my book. It was meditation, and it was thinking about Taoist principles and ideas that kept me balanced and kept me going. So, I mean, you know, I've had a lot of experience. I'm a fairly strong person physically, and I became strong mentally, I guess, from all the things I read. So I could cope with it. But even so, when the court case ended, I was actually physically in not a very good shape. I had a lot of, my guts were screwed up, and I could feel that the stress had this
Physical symptoms,
on me. Now, I didn't have a heart attack, but I'm sure that happens to people from this kind of thing. And so I then had to spend a good couple of years getting myself back in the shape I was in. And actually, it's taken me more than 2 years. It took a long time. So I could understand that stress is a killer.
Yeah.
And I felt, as you can imagine, betrayed by them.
Throughout your career, you've had success. I'd love to know, sitting here now with you, all the things you've achieved, the legacy side of things, the family and so on, but how do you define success?
I've had more failure than success. I've made a lot of films that didn't succeed, and it didn't work. My books are not bestsellers. So you could say they're failures, right? If they're not in the top, you know.
Yeah.
So in Taoists say success and failure, same thing. Nothing, there's no difference with them. They don't mean anything. You know, it's just ways of looking at things. I'm a success, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, I'm a winner. This is all nonsense. This is crap.
And this is something you've gone on an evolution and learned in your journey. So the definition of success for you in your 20s, for example, would be totally different to that.
I was an ambitious young guy, and I wanted that film to succeed. I thought I could run a studio in Hollywood and all kinds of things, right? But I'm glad I didn't, because had I gone down that route, I wouldn't be here talking to you today.
Interesting.
In all kinds of ways.
Yeah, you're so interesting to talk to, and I'm very glad you have made time to talk to me. I would love to continue talking longer, but we've run out of time.
Okay.
But thank you so much for
All right,
everything
John.
you've shared with me. I've loved talking to you.
Well, this has really been a great conversation, and as you said, we'll have some more talks
100%.
later. Okay,
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, John.